I am very excited to have my next guest join us. He's a very talented artist whose latest EP is called Suspension of Disbelief. Christian Kuria. Christian.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for doing this on a rooftop in San Francisco, nonetheless.
It's romantic.
It
romantic, yeah.
What, have you spent many a rooftop having some romance?
You know, I haven't, which is maybe why I appreciate it so much. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful day here and everything like that. So
yeah, we're filming this literally after the rains and all the nonsense. But you enjoy the rain, from what I recently understand.
Love it. I think for some strange reason, the rain has always brought about like the most sort of creativity for me, which I don't know. I don't know if it's like an emotional thing but I'm just able to sort of get into the zone when it rains. So I've always loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're dressed appropriately for this backdrop. I gotta say, we'll touch on your apparel line and so forth, but I tried to dress up as much as possible to hopefully get to your level. But
Killing.
Is this part of the Taroka apparel?
I think that like I've really been sort of digging in on like a sort of aesthetic, and I've always had an appreciation for fashion, but I think as of recent, over the past like year, I've really been digging in on finding, you know, my sort of space aesthetically. And so what I'm wearing right now actually doesn't reflect anything from a brand perspective, but it definitely is representative of like, you know, what me and my creative partners are into. And so, yeah.
Who are the fashion icons or influences that help to inform what you've created?
You know, I think for me, I think it was more of like a culture. Like I grew up skateboarding and obviously living in California and like the Bay Area punk scene. I think that a lot of that has sort of trickled down into my aesthetic sort of identity now. And so it's not so much one person. I think that as of recently, I've been studying the greats, but really up until this point, it's just been like, what vibe am I trying to go after? I've gone through a lot of phases over my life. And so, yeah, I'd say that it's more the sort of cultural sort of thing that I chase, whether it be like skateboarding, whether it be sort of like this sort of punk goth thing that I'm on lately. I grew up being a huge fan of like the punk scene, and a lot of it was stuff that had sort of come before me. But you know, there's 924 Gilman and famous sort of punk collective, and I think a huge reason why, you know, guitar is a huge part of my musical identity is because that was the entry point for me, and maybe the proximity to that was what sort of set me off on this chorus.
Right.
And so, yeah, like definitely a huge cultural hub for me.
Where was that transition from being in a punk band with your friends for like 5 months or whatever in high school to, I'm gonna take this seriously, I'm gonna listen to John Mayer, learn about the technicalities, and R&B influence? You
know what, you said it, John Mayer. I found John Mayer, and I think everything changed for me. And I think that I was like, I was like I was an angsty teenager, and I was trying to be this sort of nonconformist. And I found his music and I found his playing, and it was such a deep appreciation that it really sparked something in me that sort of allowed me to explore other things. I started listening to hip hop, I started listening to R&B, I started listening to blues music, and in like really sort of studying the guitar at that point, I think that it forced me to sort of open my mind in ways that I hadn't before.
Both genres are still kind of exterior to church music, which is what you grew up with your parents being musical as well. And I would imagine that being in the church also gives a lot of structure and influence as well, right?
So I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with my career so far is that I have sort of a lot of my musical training started being a church musician from a young age. And so being able to sort of just delve into the instrument and learn, you know, chord changes and ear training and all of these things that, you know, maybe the vast majority of artists, you know, don't come into their craft, you know, that way. And so, you know, I grew up like in my especially my late teens and early 20s, like I was really heavy into, I was playing in a lot of churches, and I had grown up playing in church. And so the musicality in these places, especially like in Oakland and the East Bay, it's such a sort of unique musicality, and I met a lot of great musicians, and I learned a lot about myself musically, and then also, yeah, just growing up, you know, my parents, my dad was a minister, and so every single week I had a place to sort of learn how to play, and you hear that in my music now, because everything that almost everything that I sort of am on a foundational level musically is a result of what I learned in those spaces.
With your parents also being immigrants, I'm sure, I mean, there's so many different things that I would feel influence and shaped how you approach making music, how you approach lyricism.
Yeah.
And the Bay Area being as diverse as it is, what was it like assimilating and having their perspective, and then also trying to fit in? And you know, you talked about being an outsider and skateboarding and things like that.
I think I'm really proud of it now, and I'm really sort of, it's such a huge part of me, and I didn't even know it, because there was really this sort of sense of, maybe like there was a cultural disconnectedness to the world around me, because, you know, my mom being, you know, originally from here, my dad being from Kenya, and my entire family, and having extended family who live in Kenya or speaking a different language, that was normal to me. And you know, I think, like, especially just as a person, I think that it affected me in ways that I really appreciate, where I'm able to sort of like disconnect from these ideas that maybe are generally hard to disconnect from, whether it be genre, whether it be culture, and realize, like, hey, I'm a person who has this colorful background, and I can sort of tap into these different parts of me, and like, I think, you know, there was music in both sides of my family, but then I had an aunt in Kenya who had like a Kenyan children's choir, and, you know, so I got used to hearing, you know, music in a different language, and music in Swahili and Kikuyu, and I think that shaped me in ways that are probably more subconscious, but I can definitely feel were big parts of who I was and am now.
Were you trying to escape that as a teenager and as a youth? Because I feel like a lot of kids that have an immigrant, you know, father or mother, right, and a lot of that around them, but then they go to school and you just talk in English and so forth, right? You just want to get away from that.
It's definitely a challenge especially when you're young, because assimilating into any social group as a child/teenager is already difficult. But doing so, you know, coming from this diverse background, is even more of a weird experience in a lot of ways, because you kind of, as a teenager, already don't know who you are, and having this almost dual cultural life makes that even more challenging. So I think that there definitely was, you know, a normal degree of like, oh, like, you know, this is, you know, these are my parents, and like, it's like embarrassing or whatever, but like, now it's something that I really, really appreciate, and something I'm really proud of, and, you know, and then just, you know, like I grew up being the only sort of person of color in my school, because I grew up going to Napa, and that was like a different, you know, thing and experience for me, and so, you know, there was definitely the sort of the normal challenge like you speak about, but it's made me who I am, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people from different sort of mixed backgrounds that can relate to that.
Especially nowadays, I think there is, or has been, this shift in highlighting, emphasizing diversity, that has empowered youngsters to be like, yes, I'm, you know, Kenyan. Yes, I'm Chinese. Yes, and so forth, right? Whereas before, and I can totally relate to this, because as a growing up, I'm fifth generation, by the way, but still, my parents were very much like, you're not going to forget where you're from and your culture and things like that.
Right.
And they spoke Chinese around the house and things. But I was always kind of like, all right, that's home.
Yeah.
But in school and exterior, I'm just like everybody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's part of the challenge of coming from that background and then sort of having to assimilate into more of a sort of melting pot situation, just regionally. You know what I mean? And like you want to relate to your friends, you want to relate to the people around you. But I think also just having a little bit of that sort of outsider mentality aided me in understanding, like, you know what, like I'm me, and I am basically the sort of composite of all of the different cultural backgrounds that I'm comprised of. And my mom, having a white family on my mom's side and a Kenyan family on my dad's side, like it's wild when you're growing up, you know what I mean? But it's something that I really appreciate now.
And did that help to inform Taruka?
Yes, absolutely. So I really wanted, I remember like I was trying to figure out what that song title was going to be, and I had the idea, and I toyed around with it a little bit, and it almost took a sense, like a little bit of bravery to name a song. Firstly, like anytime you name a song, a title that doesn't include the lyric, it's like I wonder how they're going to take this, or if this is going to be understood. But yeah, like it's a nod to that heritage, and the word Taroka, meaning to escape or to run away, was equal parts what I was trying to convey emotionally, but also what I wanted to convey, about me and my background.
Sun Bleach is probably one of my favorite songs on this EP.
It's my favorite, actually. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's my favorite. Yeah.
And not just lyrically, but I think also because of the sonics of it all. It has that vibe,
Yeah.
and I come from the alternative space,
Yeah.
so I'm a fan of Washed Out
Yeah.
and those vibes.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's some city pop in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, I was honestly a little scared to put that song out, because it was like, this feels like a departure, you know what I mean? And this feels like something that doesn't necessarily line up all the way perfectly with this sort of R&B cutout. And I was really scared of that before I put the song out, but it was undeniable, like since the first day I wrote it, that I love this song. It's so fun, and it's like one of the songs that I'm most proud of. But like I said, as a whole, like I'm very proud of. It took a long time to write this project, just because of all the unique challenges, not just globally, but also just personally.
We are at the beginning of 23, and you have some big plans, I understand,
Yeah.
with new music. What can you share?
Yeah, so as a writer, you're always writing new things, and so you can definitely expect some new music coming this year. But on top of that, I'm going on my first sort of real tour, like proper tour, which I'm very excited about, off the back of this music that I'm so proud of. To now go and share it with the world, I'm very excited. So you can look forward to that, and yeah, just
Just getting back into the cycle, into the groove of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it took. We could all agree it took a minute, because we all kind of had to, like, we all coming out of our homes, like, is everything really okay? Like,
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm really stoked.
Well, I am a huge fan of your music, and I really look forward to what you have coming up. Appreciate you coming out here.
Thank you so much for having me.